Kal Kadosh, Boker or Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Amud Aleph. We're going to start on the two dots on Kavav Mubet, 26b, the last line, where it says, Alokeach Perot Mechavero. And the Gemara starts, says Rish Lakish in the name of Rabbi Yanai. Lo Shanu, when do we say that you're allowed to take the perot and the money to yourself? Ella Belokeach Minatagar. If you're taking it from a socher, which means that he's also a middleman. So since he's also a middleman, because at the end of the day he's a socher, so therefore he also takes from a lot of people. So therefore, since he doesn't know who it is to give the money back, because there's no siman, so therefore he's going to be mityaesh. But if you're going to take it from the balabait, chayav lachzir, you're obligated to come and to give it back. We're on the top of Kav Zayin Amud Aleph. Yeah, v'chen tani. Yeah, and then he says v'chen tani Tana kamed Rav Nachman lo shanu ella lokeach min hatagarav lokeach min balabait chayav lachzir, you're obligated to give it back. So Elmaleh Rav Nachman. No, this is the Gemara. Elmaleh Rav Nachman v'chi balabait be'atzmo dashan. He says what? Does the balabait himself always do, whether it's the dash or anything else? He also has poalim, which means that if you're going to tell me that the tagar you don't have to give it back because there's other people in the middle, right? But the balabait you do have to give it back. He says what? The balabait himself does also the dash and all the other things as well. Elmaleh, he says isme, right? He says what? You want me to get rid of this braita? What do you want? Elmaleh, he says lo. תתרגם מצניתך, you have to say that the מצניתך is כגון שדשן על ידי עבדו ושפחתו כעננים. He says, who is the one that did the dash? The Eved and Shivcha Kananim, and not through Poalim Israel. Because if it's going to be done through Avadim Kananim, it belongs to him. So therefore, from the beginning until the end, the entire process belongs to him. But if it was done through another Israel, once it belongs to that Israel, even though he's a Poel, so therefore what happens is that now, right, you wouldn't have to give it back to him. So that's what the Gemara says until here. Okay. Mishnah. Mishnah on Kav Zayin Amud Aleph. 27a says the Mishnah. A few lines down. Afa simla hayta bichlal kol elu. Do you know that a simla, which is a clothing, right, that got lost, also was part of all these mitzvot of Hashavat Aveda? Velama yatzat. So why did you take it out of the kilal? Right, because it says in the pasuk, "V'chen ta'aseh lesimlato." That's what you have to do also to the simla. So he says, "La'kish elea," to make a hekesh. V'lomar lecha, and to tell you, ma simla miyuchedet sheyesh ba simanim. We're talking about a stam clothing that has a siman. V'yesh la tov'in, and it has tov'in, which means that it's made through human beings and not from efkel, and therefore the Torah obligated you to come and to be machriz. Af kol davar shesh bo simanim, has to be something that has simanim. V'yesh lo tovin, and people that are demanding it, chayav lachriz, you're obligated to mention it. But if you have an avedah which there's no tovin, for example, it was already yush, so therefore there's no mitzvah to do a shavat avedah, even though it has simanim. Okay, so therefore the reason why we came and we took the simla out of the package, meaning I could have just said something that was lost. Now that I say something was lost, that's it. Now, why did I come and I say also clothing? Right? A piece of clothing. Why? So you're coming, we're trying to learn that this piece of clothing is trying to teach us, I catch to other things as well. That it has to be something that has simanim and there's tovim. If there's no tovim, which means, right, if right now it's going to be yush, there's no tovim. Tovim means that somebody's asking, demanding for it. So if there's already yush, nobody's demanding for it. Kaddish, that's it. If there's no tovim, that means they lost hope. Okay? Fine. Says the Gemara, "My bichlal kol elu." Ask the Gemara, what does it mean now that the simla was part of everything? What does it mean bichlal kol elu? Part of everything. So Amar Rava comes and he says, "Bichlal kol avedat achicha." It was part of all of avedat achicha, and therefore, since the simla was part of all avedat achicha, yeah. So therefore, that's why we're saying that it's extra. Because when you say kol avedat achicha, a simla is already included. Kol avedat achicha means anything that your brother lost. So therefore, obviously, everything was included. Okay? So, he comes now and he says like this. Amar Rava. Rava comes and he says, yeah, Lama li dekatav rachmana shor hamor se vesimla. Why does the Torah have to tell you ashor, se, Yeah, Hamor vesimla. Why? It's all Avedat Achicha. Everything is considered your brother's lost object. Why did you have to say a shor, a hamor, right? The ox, the donkey, the sheep, and the clothing. Why do you need all four? Answers the Gemara, tzricha, you need it. Di katav rachmana, because if the Torah wrote simla, havamina would have thought to say hanemila, one of these words, davka is going to be only be'edim de gufa v'simanim de gufa. Only if you're going to have edim or simanim, right, on the gufa veda, that he could prove that the chevetz is his. But a chamor, right, but to give back a chamor, be'edim de ukaf v'simanim de ukaf, when he doesn't have, right, the edim or the simanim, that the ukaf that the chamor has is his, right, but he doesn't have on the simanim or the edim on the chamor. He only has it on the saddle. So I would have thought to say that you don't have to give it back. So katav rachmana hamor. That's why the Torah wrote down the chamor. Tafilu chamor b'simanei ukaf, because even the chamor you're going to give it back with the simanim of the ukaf, which is on the chamor. So one more time. Technically speaking, lechol avedat achicha includes everything. So if lechol avedat achicha, anything which your brother lost includes everything, so why did you take out the shor chamor v'simla? So he comes and he says, he takes out the chamor to teach you that even if you don't have a siman, or you don't have a dim on the chamor, but you only have it on the ukaf, on the chamor, which is the saddle, which is on the chamor, it's good enough. And therefore you get it back. Okay, so that's the first one. That is talking about the hamor. Shor v'seh de katav rachman alamali. Why do we need the shor v'seh? Shor va'afilu legizat znavo. Even if we're talking about, right, that the one that came and he sheared the wool. Shearing is that when you come and you cut the hair. You cut the hair. No, the shearing of the wool. Shearing of the wool is when you come and you take. Which one? Yeah, 1 second. That if right now he cut, right, the one is the searot at the end of the tail of the ox, he has to even give that back with the shor, even though it's a small amount. So therefore the shor is coming to teach you that even if he came and he took off a few hairs at the end of it, it's davar muat, it's something small. No, you have to give the back as well. That is the shor. Se, why do we have to give se? Legizotav, to the shearing of its wool. Which means you have to, if you find it, you're obligated to give it back, the shearing of the wool that you sheared from the sheep. Okay? So says the Gemara, one second. If they're both teaching you about shearings, one is the shearing of the wool of the shor, and one of them is on the sheep. So lichtov rachman shor, which is going to be vafilu legizat znavo, vekol sheken se legizyotav. If I tell you that you're obligated to give back the small shearing at the end of the tail of the ox, and that's something small, kol sheken, you have to give back the se, right, the sheep, to shearing. The shearing of the wool of the sheep is very, very big. It's much more. So he says, the kol sheken. So answers the Gemara, Elam Rava, but rather Rava comes and he says, Hamor debor le Rabbi Yehuda, v'se Davida, le divrei kol kashia. What does that mean? When you have the concept of the bor, so in the Torah, in Parashat Bor, the concept of the Hamor there is a question according to Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda is not memayet niske kelim in the bor, right, from this word. Meaning, if you remember, we spoke about already the beginning of Masechet Baba Kama. We spoke about that. What happens if you have be'ema vekelim shenoflim letoch habor? If you have an animal or utensils that fall inside of the pit, are you obligated or not obligated? Rabbi Yehuda was not memayet, and therefore he said you're obligated. Well, they wanted to learn from the word of the hamor in the bor that really be'emet you're not obligated from it. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, you are obligated in the hamor, which means be'emar kelim, inside of the bor. Or the word se, bayan aveda, right, is according to everybody a question, which means, one more time, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the word hamor, which is mentioned in bor, is extra. And according to everybody, the word se in Hashavat Aveda is extra. So therefore, you're right, it's extra, and we don't have an answer. It's extra, superfluous, and we don't have an answer why be'emet do we actually write it. So says the Gemara, 1 second. Ve'ima leglalim udata. Maybe the word se is coming to teach you that you're obligated to give back to the owner even the glalim that the animal came and that he put out. Remember the glalim, what is the galal? Galal is the excrement. And I would have thought to say that you're obligated to give back the excrement because the excrement is like fertilizer, right? That's what they do,
fire.
right? Fire, fertilizer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So what does that mean?
Rabbi, we learned
Fertilizer.
to warm the houses with the food and burn it.
I don't remember. Yeah. So the excrement, and therefore, since the excrement in itself, right, is very, very important, so therefore I would say that you have to give it back. Yeah. So he comes and he answers, Glalim afkure mafkeluhu. He says the glalim, he makes it efker. He says, so if so, for sure the word se cannot be included in the glalim. Right? Why? Because you have nothing more to gain. So says the Gemara, Vedilma lesimaninu data. Says maybe the word se is coming to teach you that you have to give it back al pi simanim. Yeah, di lan, because we had a question: is simanin doraita or not doraita? And Katav Rahmana said, afilu simanin me'adrinan, that even if you're going to have simanim, you give it back. Ve simanin doraita. And we wanted to bring a proof from here that midin Torah, you have to give it back with simanim. So therefore, when the Torah actually brought down the word se, it was teaching you have to give back the animal with simanim, and simanim comes from the Torah. So Amli, the Gemara says you can't explain that. Why? If the Torah gave simanim by simla, תקטני מה סמלה מיוחדת שיש בסימנים ושל טובין חייב להכריז, אף כל דבר שיש בו סימנים ושל טובין חייב להכריז, שמאמינה דסה לאו, meaning like this. I had a word, shor hamor se vesimla. And I already told you that the word simla is teaching you simanim and tovim. It has to have a siman and it has to be tovim. It has to be tovim means that people are looking for it, because if they already have the yush, there's no tovim. So therefore, if there's nobody that's asking for it, even if there is a siman, you don't have to give it back. So if I already told you that the word simla is coming to teach you about simanim and tovim, so obviously the word shor, se, is not teaching you that. So therefore, you cannot come and tell me that. Okay. So now we continue. Tana Rabbanan. We have another Braita. The Braita says, to do with Shavat Avidah. The Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita. Asher Tovad. When it says the word Asher Tovad, that means it got lost from him. This is Prat Laveda Shem Vasheve Pruta. This comes to exclude an Aveda that does not have a Sheve Pruta. Right? So therefore, it's not considered an Aveda. So imagine somebody lost a penny. And nowadays, a penny is not considered Shave Pruta. Okay, I gave a bad example, but penny anyway does not have a siman, it's money. But let's pretend that it was something that has a value of a penny. Right? But let's say it's not considered Aveda. Because an Aveda is something that is Shave Pruta. If it's going to be less than a Pruta, there's no mitzvah of Hashavat Aveda. Rabbi Yudah says, Umtzatah. When it says the word Umtzatah, yeah, is Prat Laveda Shem Shave Pruta. That's where you learn it from, that it's not considered an Aveda that does not have a Shave Pruta. So again, two different places. How do we exclude an Aveda that does not have a Shave Pruta? The first one was learning it from Asher Tovad Mimenu, that it got lost from him. This is excluding an Aveda that does not have a Shave Pruta. And according to Rabbi Yudah, he learns it from Umtzatah, that you found it. It's a davar that it's called a Metzia. That means you found something. If you come and you find a penny in the street, I don't think you're going to come to the Bet Knesset and you're going to start saying, by the way, you should know, I found the penny in the street. I'm going to say, okay. And? You understand, Kiru? That's called a Metzia. Right, Metzia means you found something. You're going to start, you found the penny. You're going to tell me you found $1. Maybe, okay. I'm saying even that, but let's see. Okay, maybe. Right? Found $100 for sure. You're going to tell me, I just found $100 on the street. 100%. But you found a penny on the street. It's not even Shaveh Pruta. You found a nickel on the street. You're going to be mitlev. Not going to be mitlev. Yeah? Fine. Okay. So now the Gemara is going to ask my Benayu. What's the difference between them? At the end of the day, both rabbis agree that if it does not have Shaveh Pruta, is a klum. It's nothing. So what do I care where they're learning it from? Whether they're learning from a Shetovami menu that it was lost from him, so it had to be worth something in order to be lost, or whether they learned it umtzata, that has to be a metzia, that you found something, right, that has to be shaveh pruta. What do you care how you learn it from? Samar Abaye says, you're right, mashmu dorshini kabinah. The only difference is how you doresh, the pasuk. More nafkale miyashet tova. Each one is learning it from a different part of the pasuk, but it's on. There's no nafkamina in halacha. You're right, it's the same halacha. So Asa Gimaral man de nafkale miyashet tova dungarem umtzata mayavile. Says, but if you're going to learn it from asher tova mimenu, this word of umtzata, what is he learning it from it? So he says, Haumi baile lech Ravnai. He says that pasuk, right? They're learning it from Ravnai. Ta'amar Ravnai, but says Ravnai, umtzata ta'atay yadeh. What does it mean, umtzata? Umtzata means that it's coming from its hands mashma. Meaning, the mashmaut of the milah of umtzata is that it's already in your hands. So therefore it says, V'chen ta'aseh lechol avedat achicha asher toveh mimenu umtzata. So when it says achicha, we are going to be doresh that there's no obligation to give back to an oveda kochavim. Yeah, that's what we're saying. And Rav Nai is coming and saying, since the word umtzata is that it's already in your hands, it comes out that you're not obligated to give back to an oveda kochavim, even if you already have it in your hands, right? And even if that's what he's saying, okay? And that's what the Tanakama is actually learning from this word, okay? Okay, so that means basically we thought that if you already take it to your hands, you're obligated not to give back to the Oved Kochavim. Comes Tichun Tzata, that even if it's already in your hands, he's still not considered maybe a Achicha, because at the end of the day, the Oved Kochavim is not considered a Achicha, and therefore you're not obligated to give it back to him. So says the Gemara, Ulman de Nafkale Tzata, which is Rabbi Yehuda. What does he do with Asher Tova Mimenu? What does he do with it? So he says, Mibaile le Rabbi Yochanan. He needs it like Rabbi Yochanan. Tamar Rabbi Yochanan Shimon Shimon Yochai, says Rabbi Yochanan name Rabbi Shimon Yochai. Minayin la aveda sheshatfa nahar shi muteret. How do we know that if you have an aveda that it was taken with the river, how do you know that you're allowed to keep it? Shneimar, but it says in a pasuk, V'chen ta'aseh lechol avedat achicha asher tovenu mitzatah. Aved mi she'avuda imenu mitzuya etzel kol adam yatzta she'avuda imenu v'enu mitzuya etzel kol adam. He says like this. He says, when it says umtzata, it means that you happen to find it, which means that it was lost from you, but it's found by everybody else. Here, it was lost from you, and it wasn't found by anybody else. Because again, the river is taking it with it. So therefore, when we're coming and we're trying to say exactly how are you finding it, right? We're trying to come and say that the way that you're finding it is that it's lost from you, and it's found by other people. Okay, that's what we're trying to say until here. Okay? Fine. Says now the Gemara as follows. Ve'idach, the other shita, right? How does he know this concept of Rav Nai? Yeah, how does he know? So he says, Nafkale umtzata. He learns it out from umtzata, right? So therefore, right, from the extra vav of umtzata. That's how he's learning it. So since you already have the vav is teaching you it's lashon avar, and therefore it's ki'ilu that it already came to your hand. So since it already came to your hand, that's why it's going to be okay. Yeah? Says the Gemara, ve'idach, yeah, and the other, which is the Tanakama, had Rabbi Yochanan minale. How does he know this concept of Rabbi Yochanan? So he says, nafkale mimenu. He learns it from the word mimenu. Okay? He learns it from the word, right, mimenu. Because it said in the pasuk, umtzatah mimenu. No, sorry. He learned asher tovad mimenu. Where's the pasuk? Here it is. Asher tovad mimenu umtzatah lo tuchal litalem. Okay? So says the Gemara, ulman denafkale miumtzatah. Sorry. So he learns it from the word mimenu. Ve'idach, the other shita, mimenu lo mashmaleh. He's saying it's not mashma to Rabbi Yehuda that we can make the drasha of the word mimenu. Okay? Fine. Now we're going to try to bring another machloke between Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. Another explanation between the machloket of Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. Rava comes and he says, Prutashu uzlai kabenayu. The difference between them is, remember that each one was learning it from a different pasuk. One of them was learning it from a pasuk of Umtzatah, and the other one was learning it from the pasuk of Asher Tovad Menu. What does that mean exactly? Asher Tovad Mimenu and Umtzatah. So he comes and he says, right, like this. He says that what we're learning is, right, is what happens if you have that it became cheaper. Meaning, at the time of the Avedah, it was Shaveh Pruta. But now it became cheaper than a Shaveh Pruta. Yeah, it went down in value. So he comes and he says, yeah, as follows. He says, Manda Amar, according to the Manda Amar, yeah, according to the Manda Amar, Me'asher Tovad, right, Ika, right, there's a chovah to give back. Yesh chovah, you have to give it back. Why? Because it depends upon Beshat Avedah. Manda Amar, and according to the Manda Amar, Umtzatah Leka, right? According to the Manda Amar that says Umtzatah, it's not. Why? Because do you go after the time that he lost it? The time that he lost it, it was Shaveh Pruta. But right now, it's not Shaveh Pruta. So that's the difference between them. Okay, there, if you learn from a Shetova Mimenu, it was Shaveh Pruta. But if you learn from Umtzata, it's not Shaveh Pruta now. So therefore, obviously, you don't have to give it back. But according to the Manda Amar, Shetovad, Habaina Umtzata Veleka. He says, one second, even according to the Manda Amar, which was Tanakama, that you learn it from a Shetovad, you still need it to be Umtzata, and you don't have it, because it's not going to be Shaveh Pruta. Ela Pruta, I can hear you. Leka, you don't have it. So ela pruta sheukra ika benayu. But rather the pruta that became more expensive. That's the difference between them. Okay, manda amar umtzata, right? According to the manda amar umtzata ika, you do have it. Umanda amar, but according to the manda amar me'asher tovad, you don't have it because again, obviously here it went up in value, which means that at the time of the Avedah, yeah, it was shaveh pruta, and then afterwards, right, it became a shaveh pruta, right, afterwards, not when he lost it, meaning the opposite way around. At the beginning, when the guy lost it, it was not shaveh pruta. So since it was not shaveh pruta at the beginning when they lost it, so therefore fine. But now it became a shaveh pruta. Okay? Ulmanda amar, according to the manda amar, umtzata, habayina nasher tovad, veleka, you need nasher tovad, and you don't have it. So answers the Gemara, ela pruta sheukra veuzla vechazra veukra ika benayu. Says you're right. We're talking about a pruta that became more expensive, cheaper, and then more expensive. Which means, right, the Evdel Halacha is that it's basically it's fluctuating, right? That means the Avedah was Shaveh Pruta, right, at the beginning when it got lost. Then it became cheaper, and then again it became more expensive, right? Bava Metzia. So according to the Manda Amar Tovad, you have it, and according to the Manda Amar Av Umtzata, right, we need that it has to be a Shir Metzia from the time that you lost it until the time that you found it. And here obviously you don't have that because obviously it went down in value in the middle. So says the Gemara, so we're going to ask the question, Simanim Doraita or Rabbanan. So says the Gemara, my nafkamina, what's a nafkamina with the Doraita or Rabbanan? So answers the Gemara, Kavzana Mubela, do the get Isha besimanim, to give back a get Isha besimanim. Kal Kadosh, we're continuing on Kav Zayin Amud Bet. We're just starting on Kav Zayin Amud Aleph on the bottom where it says, we just asked the question, is Simanim Doraita, and therefore when you come and you give it back, it's Mina Torah that you give it back, or it's only a Din Drabbanan that you have to give it back, right? Which means that you don't give it back unless there's a Din, Mina Torah. So that's the question about Simanim. So we asked, what's enough kamina? So this is where we were finishing, where we said, La dure get Isha besimanim, to give back a get of a woman al pi simanim, which means if the husband sent the get with a shaliach and the get got lost, do we give back the get to the shaliach al pi simanim or not? Marta, if you're going to tell me that simanim doraita, so obviously you give it back. You're going to get her divorced, fine. But simanim or doraita, you give it back, and then you get a married woman, get her divorced. But if you're going to tell me it's only the Rabbanan, maybe when do the rabbis coming to make their takana that you're going to be somech on simanim be mamona to do with mamon because of hefker betin hefker, which means the betin have the power of making something hefker. Aval beisura, but to do with isurim, lo avu rabbanan takanta. The rabbis never made right a takana. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara, Tashema. We're going to try to bring now a proof. Afa simla hayta bichlal kol elu. You remember that we said beforehand that the simla was part of Avedat Achicha, right? That means the clothing was part of Avedat Achicha. Velama yatsa la'kish elea. So why do we take it out? To make a kesh, You had to be makish. What? ולומר לך to tell you, just like the simla is מיוחדת שיש לו סימנים ויש לו טובים. It's got סימנים and טובים, וחייב להכריז, and you're obligated to come and to be מכריז. אף כל דבר שיש לו סימנים ויש לו טובים, חייב. So too, anything which has סימנים, and it has tovim, you're going to be chayav lachris. So therefore, since you're coming and you're telling me that the word of simla, you're not obligated to give it back unless it's got simanim, so it's muchach that simanim are mina Torah. Right? You learn it from simla. Right? This is what I think you said before, doctor, to do with the concept. Right? That means simanim, you should bring a proof from simla. Which one? Simla is a clothing. What does it matter? A piece of clothing.
It's not a dress.
It's a, so answers the Gemara, Tana Tovin Itzrichaleh. He says, really, Be'emet, the word simla was only coming to teach you the deen of the tovin. Right? What does that mean? That if there's no tovin, so you don't have to give it back. You remember the tovin was the concept that people are asking for it, which means that if there was going to be done yush beforehand, so therefore there's no tovin, there's nobody tovea, nobody's asking for it back. So therefore, if the guy already did yush, which means he give up hope, that's it. So therefore, you could keep it. Simanin kadinasban. Simanin was derech agav, meaning the simanin really be'emet is the rabbanan. The main concept there was the tovim, but derech agav we brought it down. So therefore, we cannot bring a proof from simla. Okay. So if somebody is going to ask you, are simanim doraita or not, we cannot bring a proof from simla, but maybe simla the ikar was the tovim, and the simanim was only the stam derech agav that they brought it down. So let's try to bring another proof then. Tashima, a hamor. You remember we said that the chamor, why did it also say the word chamor? So we said that chamor was a siman of the ukaf, which means even though I don't have a siman on the chamor in itself, but I have a siman on the ukaf of the chamor, which is the saddle of the chamor, that's also going to be enough. So says the Gemara, but that shows that what? That it's mina Torah, because I'm giving you a siman. And so the Gemara, I'm going to say be'edeh ukaf, edim. Remember, edim for sure is doraita, but here we're talking about edim. It's not simanim. Simanim is a siman. I'm giving you a siman. This is the way on the saddle. I had this type of a design. I had this type of thing. That's called simanim. Edim is that I've got edim, that this is mine. That's something else. So Tashima, a third proof. The aveda, it stays with you, right, until your brothers are going to come and they're going to find it. Now, says the Gemara, says what? Do you have to give it back even before you ask for it? Which means, right, if he's not makir, the bala aveda, how's he going to give it back? Ella, but rather, dorshehu im ramayhu o enno ramay. You have to be doresh, derosh achicha. Derosh achicha means you have to actually find out whether be'emet he's a ramay or he's not a ramay. Meaning somebody comes, he says, this is mine, can you give it back? Be doresh oto. Look into him. Is he a trickster? Not a trickster? Now says the Gemara, Mailav besimanim. Are we not talking about that you're actually checking through simanim? Right? And therefore that's how you're going to check whether he's a ramai or not. So answers the Gemara, no, we're talking about be'edim, with witnesses. And even with the witnesses, again, you still have to try to find out whether be'emet he's a ramai or not. But with simanim, right, we're not going to know mina Torah, right, or not, right? Because it could be that be'emet, right, he saw the chefetz, and therefore he went and he gave the simanim, and really be'emet he already saw it. Yeah, he already saw it. Fine. Tashema. We're going to try to bring another proof now. En mi'idim ella al partzuf apanim imachotem. Do you know that we're going to testify about a person that passed away in order to permit his wife only al pi partzuf, right, with the face, with the nose. Yeah, that means they have to see him with his nose. And then they went and they were able to recognize him. But if they didn't see the partzuf and the chotem, so then you cannot testify him. Af al pi shesh simanim begufov kelav, even though he's got simanim in his body, and so for example, he had a what's it called, a birthmark, right? He had a certain birthmark, or he had certain things that it has to be the partzuf or the chotem or the nose. Shemami, now we learn from here, simanim is lav doraita, right? Why? Because you see from here, the mina Torah, you can only be somech on simanim in order to be kovea that the person passed away, right? And therefore we're going to say mina Torah, there's no simanim. Yeah, that's what we want to try to say. That means the fact that it says that you have to actually recognize the face with the nose, right? So therefore, if that means we're not going to pay attention only just to the mouth or just to the eyes. You have to have, right, the entire thing. So the Gemara now says, Amri, we wanted to say, Gufo da'aroch v'gutz, kelav d'chashinan, right, l'shela. Says the Gemara, really be'emet, I wanted to say that really simanim is mina Torah, right? And he says, however, though the Mishnah is talking about simanim, about gufo aroch ve'utz, meaning the guy was tall or he was short, right? So therefore, since there's a lot of people which are tall, a lot of people which are short, there's no raya. Meaning, if be'emet you would have come and given us another thing, even without the partzuf, so really be'emet we would have accepted it. Or even the simanim, right? The simanim of a keli, of a utensil or clothing, you know, many times they lend it out. Imagine somebody lent out his shirt, and now the guy was killed. Now I'm going to say that he was killed. Saying, it could be that somebody was, there was, it's not like an identification or a number or this and that, and things like that. So says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me now that we're going to be suspecting two she'ela, chamor b'simanei ukaf, hechi ma'adrinan. He says the chamor with the simanei ukaf, how are we going to come and give it back? Yeah? How are we going to give it back? So Amri, they said, ukaf lo shulein she ukafa. People don't lend out the saddle. Mishum de misakev le lechamara. Because it actually comes and it scratches, right, the chamor. So therefore, since not every single chamor is matim to the, meaning not every single saddle is matim to the chamor, so because of that, right, we know that for sure it belongs to this ukaf because people don't start lending out the saddles. You understand? Ibai teima, or if you want, you could answer another answer. Kelav bechivare v'sumke. We're talking about the kelim are lavan or adom, which means it's white or reddish, and therefore, so since for sure these bigadim, there's a lot of bigadim with these colors, it's not a proof that these are the ones. Okay, elahad tanya, but that which we learned in a braita, mitzao kashur bekis o be'arnaki uvtabat o shemitzao ben kelav afilu lizmamru bekasher. What happens right now if you find a get? Okay, now the shliach brought a get and it got lost, and they found it that was tied to a purse of money, right, or to arnaki, to his own purse, or a tabat, or there was a tabat tied to it, or they found it between different utensils. Afilu izmamru, even if it's going to be after a long time, kasher, it's still going to be kasher the get. The Isa, if you're going to tell me chashil and sheila, we're going to suspect that you lend out these things. So if it's going to be mitzvah kashir, but why is it going to be kosher? Maybe you lent it out. So why is it going to be kosher? Maybe it's not a proof that it belongs to you. You're the shaliach. You come and you're bringing a get, and all of a sudden you lost the get, and they found it. And even if it's going to be after a little bit of time, we're still going to say it's kosher. Why? Because it was tied to your rig, or it was tied to your clothing, or tied to a purse, or whatever it is. Your money wallet, right, or a pocketbook. You understand? All these things. If you lend it out, you lend it out. So Amri, they said, kis v'arnaki v'tarbat, you never lend out. Lo mishale inche. You never lend it out. Kis varniki, 1 second. Kis varniki, mishum timisamne. The kis varniki, because people, they believe that somebody that actually comes and they're giving it, it's not a good mazal. Meaning you never lend out somebody your wallet. Because when you lend out your wallet, it's as if you're giving them your mazal. So therefore you don't want to do that. Right? Simanu, it's like a siman on it, that is also the mazal is coming from there. The tabat, mishum de mezayef, and the tabat because maybe he's going to come and start signing your things. Right? Remember that in the olden days, the tabat was like a chotemet. Was like a chotemet. Right? And therefore what happens is that we don't want to, you'll never lend out these different utensils. Okay? So says the Gemara, Lema ketanai, why don't we just say that this entire concept of simanim, whether it's mina Torah, mina Rabbanan, it's a machlok tanaim. And then that's it. Right? We finish the story. Machlok tanaim. It says, en midim ala shuma. Right? What does that mean? We're not going to come and testify about a person that passed away to his wife that he died according to, for example, a yabelet. A yabelet is like a wart or something like that on the body. Meaning it's like a, I don't know, like a pimple, something similar, right, to that. Velazar ben Ma'avai Omer, Velazar ben Ma'avai says, Meidim ala shuma, you do it. So, Ma'ilaba kami palgez, that no the machlok between them, Tanakama savar simanim de Rabbanan. Velazar ben Ma'avai holds that simanim is doraita. But again, here we're talking about that you're permitting a married woman to the marketplace. So it means mamash has to be, like doraita or not doraita. You understand? Right? So Amar Rava comes and he says, Techule Alma, right? He says, according to everybody, simanim doraita. What does it mean simanim doraita? Right? It is doraita. And here the machloket between them is talking about by a shuma, right? Right, of what? Of in beoto makom, in the body, right? Bnei oto gil, which means that they were born in the same time with the same mazal. So more savar shuma mitzuya beben gilo. Some people say that it's in the same. They would have it in the same place, right? More savar shuma ena mitzuya beben gilo. And some people say that it's not, which means there's a machloket. If you're born in the same mazal as somebody else, would you have the same type of bodily, like birthmarks or things like that? Which is very interesting, right? That's what we're trying to say over here. Okay, ibai tema, or if you could answer another answer, right? The chuliam according to everybody, shuma mitzuya beben gilo. Nobody has the same things. But here, here we're talking about simanim which change after death, right? Which means more savar simanim. Some people say that after death, simanim change. So certain bodily things, right, signs, they could actually change after death. Umar Savar and Elazar Mavai says that simanim do not change after death, and therefore that's why if it's going to be like beforehand, we could actually permit the wife to get married. A third way of explaining the machloket. Again, what we're trying to do is that we wanted to say that it's a machloket whether simanim doraita or not. We're trying to push it away and say no, it's not a machloket tanaim. They have another machloket. So, okay. What? There's 3 different ways of learning the machloket. So there's the first one. Ibaitema, if you want, you could actually explain alma, according to everybody, shuma nasuya lishtano la'achar mita, that shuma cannot be changed after death. The simanim, meaning it's not that it can be changed, it doesn't change. Meaning that if a person dies, it's not that automatically his birthmarks or things like that, they start changing. Okay? The simanim drabanan. And really, be'emet, simanim is drabanan. But here we're arguing to do with the siman muvhak. More savar shuma siman muvhaku, or more savar shuma lav siman muvhaku, which means it's a regular siman, and therefore we cannot be somech to do with permitting an eshet ish mina Torah. Which means, do you hold that shuma as a siman muvhak or not siman muvhak? Meaning siman, yeah, it's a siman, but do you say it's a siman muvhak or not? That's the question. So 3 different ways of explaining it, but then again, we cannot say that the machloket is a machloket whether simanim doraita or rabbanan. Okay, fine. We're going back to again our simanim doraita or rabbanan. So Amar Rava comes and he says, "Im you're going to tell me simanim lav doraita, hechli madrina laveta b'simanim. If you're going to tell me simanim are not doraita, only the rabbanan, so how do you give something back? Which means, why did the chachamim come and they said give hashavat aveda according to siman if it's only the rabbanan? So answers the Gemara, the guy that lost it, he wants you to give back up his simanim. Because when he loses it from him, he also wants it to be found by simanim. So because of that, that's why he comes and he says that he wants it with simanim. Okay, makes sense? Meaning, when you lose something, you want to get it back, al pi simanim. It's going to be very difficult to start getting edim and everything to start testifying that it's yours. So you want so therefore, just like you want that they should give it back to you al pi simanim, so do the same thing. They want you to get it back through simanim. Ella, but rather, okay. Sorry, I skipped out. Right. So Amaleh Rav Safra. So Rav Safra le Rava comes and he says, "V'chi adam oseh tova le'atzmo b'mamon she'eno shelo." Which means, what do I care now, the person that finds it, if the Bala Veda is not happy about it? Which means, the Tova of the Bala Veda is that you shouldn't give it back unless it's its owner's. So now what do we care now? Because if you lose something, we want you to give it back through Simanim. So too, right, but the owner doesn't want you to give it back because it wasn't good. It wasn't his. Ella, but rather, Nichal le Bala Veda le mehav Simanim mishkele. Right? Meida yada dedim lele, because he knows that he doesn't have witnesses, but he only has simanim. Or meimar amar kule alma lo yaded simanim muvakim dida. But not everyone knows the simanim muvakim that it has. Right? Va'ana yayim the simanim muvakim dida l'shakilna. So therefore, I'm going to give the simanim muvakim and take it. Which means like this: it could be that somebody maybe might know a siman, but not a siman muvhak. Siman muvhak is much more. Listen, everybody could come and say, listen, this type of a gemara, it's like this or that. But not everyone's going to know that on this page I have a highlight, or on this page I have that's much more. That's called a sima muvhak. Meaning,
Or your name.
what? Well, okay, fine. But I'm saying, meaning, many people could have a siman, but a siman muvhak is much stronger. Okay, and therefore he says, okay, some people will come, they'll try to give simanim, but I'm going to come and we're going to put a siman muvhak right to it. Yeah. So he comes and he says like this. He says, Elahad itnan, but that which we learned in the Mishnah, Rashba Gomer, Rashba Gamliel says, Echad aloveh mishlosha yachzil aloveh. You remember we were talking about 3 different documents that you found. So he said, if you're going to borrow it from 3 different people, you give it back to the loveh because he already had the 3 different documents together. And why are the lenders all having it by together? Doesn't make sense. Shlosha shelavu mina echad. But if you have 3 different people, right? That means 3 lovim that they're coming and borrowing it from one person. Yachzil malveh, you give it back to the malveh. So nichal loveh leadur malveh. It's good to the loveh, right? That he wants to give it back to the loveh, to the malveh. Now the question is why, right? Obviously it's not good for him. Meaning, is it good that they're going to give now the documents back to the malveh, and therefore the malveh, the lender, could come and collect again? Why is it good? It's not good.
Collect again?
Huh? He's going to collect again.
He's collect again.
Elmaleh, so Rava comes and says to Rav Safra, Hatam Sfarahu. There it's a logic. What does it mean it's a logic? Even without simanim at all. Why? Echad aloveh mishlosha, right? Yachzir laloveh de gabe loveh shchiche. Says if you're going to have a loveh that's borrowing from 3 different people, right? You have to give it back to the loveh because the 3 shtarot are going to be found in his reshut of the loveh. Gabe malveh lo shchiche, but the malveh it's not going to be found, right? Why? Why in the world is one malveh going to have 3 different documents from different people as well? It doesn't make sense. Shema mina miloveh novel. So obviously it came from the loveh. But when you have 3 people, right, borrowing from one malveh, obviously it's by the malveh. So that why by the loveh it's not shchiach. Meaning, what if I borrow money, Mordechai borrows money, and the doctor borrows money. What? 1 second. Right? We have 3 different people borrowing from one malveh. Why in the world am I going to have the document of Mordechai that he owes Mr. X money, or the doctor owing Mr. X money and me? Why in the world am I going to have it? I'm the loveh. I'm not the malveh. Meaning, if it's that I'm the one that's borrowing from 3 people, so it makes sense that I have the documents by all 3 because I paid them back and I have all 3, but I didn't tear them up. Okay, but I have all 3, I could have it. But if we're talking about one lender and 3 different borrowers, why in the world is it going to be by the loveh? Doesn't make sense why it's going to be the loveh. Why would I have your document that you owe $100 to Mr. X, or you owe $100 to Mr. X? So obviously it comes from the malveh. It comes from the malveh, and therefore that's what we're actually saying.